Let me ask you a question. What are you tolerating in your life right now? Mediocre results? Toxic relationships? Waking up every day and saying, maybe next year? Here's the truth. Your life right now is exactly what your standards allow it to be. If your life is small, it's because your standards are small. If you're stuck, it's because your standards are stuck. The moment you raise them, your life has no choice but to follow. People say they want change, they want success, happiness, purpose. But most people don't have a success problem. They have a standard problem. And until that changes, nothing will. So I need you to stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I will show you not just why your life hasn't changed yet, but exactly how you can flip the switch and make the rest of your life look nothing like the past. Your standards are your destiny. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but it's the quiet truth most people never fully understand. Everything you do, every result you have, every relationship you're in, every dollar in your account, every ounce of energy you feel, when you wake up, all of it is a direct reflection of what you've been willing to settle for. Your standards are the thermostat of your life. You can dream as big as you want, but you will never rise above the level of what you truly believe you must have, must do, and must be. Think about it. There are people out there with fewer resources than you, less education, fewer connections, and yet they're building empires. They're waking up early, pushing through failure, creating opportunities where none existed. Are they lucky? Maybe. But more often, they simply refuse to accept a life below a certain level. They raised their standards and the world responded. Now flip that idea around. Why do some people, despite having talent, ambition, and good intentions, stay stuck year after year? Because deep down, they've accepted just enough. Just enough to get by. Just enough to not be uncomfortable. Just enough to say they're trying. But just enough is a prison made of soft cushions. It keeps you from pain, sure, but it also keeps you from greatness. Raising your standards means deciding that certain things are no longer acceptable. That being tired is not an excuse. That being broke is not your identity. That average effort, half-hearted discipline, toxic environments, these are not negotiable anymore. And when you truly raise your standards, you won't even need to announce it. People will feel it in your presence, in your work ethic, in the way you speak, walk, and think. You become a different person, not because the world changed, but because your internal rules did. It's not just about wanting more, everybody wants more. It's about changing what you demand of yourself every day. When your standard is excellence, you show up differently. You follow through not because it's fun, but because it's who you are now. You don't wait for conditions to be perfect. You start where you are with what you have and make it enough. Destiny isn't written in the stars, it's written in your standards. And if you want to change where your life is headed, you don't need more luck or more time or more motivation. You need one powerful decision: to never again settle for less than what you were truly born to become. When that happens, life doesn't just improve, it transforms. Because your standards rise first and everything else follows. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you tolerate. That truth stings a little, doesn't it? Because deep down we all want to believe that hard work alone should pay off. That being a good person should bring good outcomes. That having potential is enough. But life doesn't operate on fairness, it operates on standards. What you consistently tolerate sets the boundaries for your results. It's not about what you say you want, it's about what you're willing to allow or refuse in your life. Every area where you feel stuck is probably a place where you've tolerated something for too long. If your job drains you, ask yourself, how long have I tolerated being underpaid, undervalued, or uninspired? If your body feels weak and tired, how long have you tolerated skipping workouts, eating without intention, or prioritizing everything else over your health? If your relationships feel shallow or toxic, how long have you tolerated disrespect, poor communication, or emotional laziness? The hard truth is this: the life you're living today is the result of the standards you've silently agreed to. Now understand, this isn't about blame. It's about reclaiming power. Because once you realize you've been tolerating things you don't have to, you also realize you have the power to raise the bar. But here's the catch. Raising your standards doesn't mean things will get easier. In fact, it often gets harder at first. Because when you stop tolerating mediocrity, people push back. You push back. Your old habits scream for attention. Your comfort zone tries to pull you back. But that discomfort is the price of transformation. Every person you admire, every success story you watch started with someone saying, "I refuse to keep living like this." They got sick of their own excuses. They got angry at their own patterns. They looked in the mirror and said, "Not anymore." And when that shift happened, when they stopped tolerating average life, started making room for the extraordinary, you have to be willing to disappoint others to stop disappointing yourself. You have to be willing to walk away from things that feel familiar but no longer fit. And most importantly, you have to stop waiting for permission to live at a higher level. Nobody is coming to raise your standards for you. Not your boss, not your partner, not your friends. That job is yours. So ask yourself honestly, what have I been tolerating? What beliefs? What habits? What relationships? And then decide today that you're no longer available for anything that doesn't match the life you're committed to building. Because you don't get what you deserve in life. You get what you demand of yourself and what you refuse to tolerate any longer. That decision changes everything. Comfort is the enemy of growth. It lulls you into thinking you're safe when in reality, it's quietly killing your potential. Growth never happens in the comfort zone because nothing forces you to change there. It's warm, predictable, and easy, but it's also where dreams go to die. The longer you stay comfortable, the more you delay becoming the person you were meant to be. You can't grow and stay comfortable at the same time. It's one or the other. And if your standards are built around comfort, you'll always settle for less than what you're capable of. The problem is, comfort feels good in the short term. Skipping the gym feels better today than pushing through the workout. Watching another episode feels better now than building your business plan. Saying "I'll start tomorrow" feels better than facing the hard truth today. But those small choices compound, and suddenly years go by, and you realize you've been living the same day over and over disguised as a life. Every person who has achieved something extraordinary had to go through a period of extreme discomfort. They had to raise their standards and say, "I will not allow myself to stay in this place." That meant doing things that didn't feel good in the moment, waking up earlier, having difficult conversations, failing in public, being misunderstood, sacrificing short-term pleasure for long-term fulfillment. That's the trade-off. You give up comfort now so you can live a life later that others can only dream of. Comfort convinces you that you have time. Growth reminds you that you don't. Every day you choose comfort, you lose a day of becoming who you were born to be. And most people don't change because they wait for a crisis. They wait until the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of change. But what if you didn't wait? What if you raised your standards before life forced you to? What if you learned to get uncomfortable by choice? That's where real growth begins, when you deliberately put yourself in situations that stretch you, scare you, challenge you. It's in those moments you find out what you're really made of. And over time, the discomfort becomes your new comfort zone. You get addicted to improvement. You crave challenge. You seek pressure. Because you understand that growth is not just about achieving more, it's about becoming more. So ask yourself, what is comfort costing me? What am I avoiding right now because it's hard? And what would happen if I faced it instead of running from it? The life you want is not found in ease. It's found in elevation. And to rise, you must be willing to feel the burn of the climb. Success doesn't come to the lucky, but to the relentless. The world loves to tell stories about overnight success, talent, and being in the right place at the right time, but those are just surface-level explanations. The real reason some people rise while others stay stuck is because of relentlessness. It's because they hold themselves to a higher standard every single day, regardless of how they feel, who's watching, or how far off the finish line looks. Success doesn't show up to people who want it. It shows up to those who demand it from themselves, even when nothing is guaranteed. Relentless people don't wait for permission. They don't stop when it gets hard. They don't let failure define them. They keep going not because they always feel strong, but because quitting is no longer part of their identity. Their standards don't allow it. And that's the secret. Success is less about talent and more about how long you can stay in the fight. It's about consistency when motivation disappears. It's about discipline when results are delayed. It's about deciding that you will keep showing up until the result has no choice but to appear. We've all met people who were brilliant, creative, or full of potential, but they couldn't stay committed. They started fast but faded quickly. They had moments of inspiration but no structure to support it. Why? Because their standards were flexible. They only did the work when it was convenient or when they felt inspired. But success doesn't reward the inspired. It rewards the consistent. It rewards the ones who show up at 5 a.m. even when they're exhausted. The ones who practice the fundamentals over and over until mastery isn't an accident, it's inevitable. Relentlessness is a mindset. It says, no matter what it takes, I'll find a way. And that mindset comes from having standards that don't bend just because things get hard. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to the level of your standards. So if your standard is I work hard when it's easy, then don't be surprised when you break down under pressure. But if your standard is I show up no matter what, then pressure only makes you sharper. Being relentless doesn't mean you never rest. It doesn't mean you never fail. It means you never stay down. You might fall. You might doubt yourself. But your standards won't let you stay in that place for long. And that's what separates those who wish from those who win. Not luck. Not privilege. Not perfect timing, but a relentless commitment to a standard that refuses to settle. So if you want success, don't just raise your ambition, raise your standard for effort, resilience, and persistence. Because the ones who win aren't the ones who had the easiest path. They're the ones who refuse to stop walking it. Change your standards, change your identity. Most people try to change their lives by changing their habits, their schedules, even their goals, but they never address the root, who they believe they are. And the truth is, your standards don't just influence your behavior, they create your identity. Every time you raise or lower what you accept from yourself, you are making a silent but powerful declaration of who you are. You are casting votes day after day for the type of person you believe you are becoming. If you want lasting transformation, don't start with your results, start with your standards. Because when your standards shift, you shift. Think about it. Someone who has a standard that says, I never miss a workout, doesn't have to convince themselves to go to the gym. It's not a debate, it's who they are. Someone who sees themselves as a leader doesn't have to be reminded to take initiative or make tough decisions. It's natural. Not because it's easy, but because it's aligned with their identity. The standard has become part of how they see themselves. And identity is powerful once you believe something about yourself. You'll fight to stay consistent with it, even without realizing it. This is why most people fail to sustain change. They set goals, but their standards don't change. They want new results, but they're living under the same rules. You can write down affirmations all day, but if your internal standard still allows procrastination, excuses, or half effort, nothing will stick. Real change happens when you say, I'm not that person anymore. I don't do that. I don't allow that. That's not who I am now. And you follow through, not to impress anyone, but because it feels wrong to go back. Raising your standards is a declaration of identity. It says, I'm someone who holds myself to a higher level now. That's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's not about being better than others. It's about being better than your former self. And once your identity rises, your behaviors follow naturally. You don't have to force yourself to perform. You're simply acting in alignment with your new standard. So if you want to change your life, stop trying to add more goals to your list. Start subtracting the things that no longer belong to the person you're becoming. Raise the standard. Act like the future version of yourself. Speak like them. Think like them. Move like them. And don't wait for proof before you believe it. Belief is the first proof. When your standards rise, your identity changes. And when your identity changes, your entire life transforms from the inside out. You don't just improve what you do. You redefine who you are. So here's the truth, and it's not comfortable, but it's powerful. You are not stuck. You are simply living at the level of standards you've been willing to accept. The life you dream about, the impact you want to make, the person you know deep down you could become, it's all waiting behind one decision: to raise the bar and never lower it again. You don't need more motivation. You don't need more luck. You don't need permission. What you need is to draw a line in the sand and say, this version of me ends today. Because the moment you say, I'm no longer available for average, I'm done with excuses, I expect more from myself now, that's the moment life begins to move. Raise your standards and your habits will change. Raise your standards and your relationships will shift. Raise your standards and your results will finally catch up to your potential. Not someday. Not when things get easier. Not when you feel ready. Now. Because when you change your standards, you don't just upgrade your circumstances.